Hello and welcome to the We All Follow podcast. My name is Matt Fox. I'm your host. Today I am joined by the man who puts the N in networking, Nigel. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, good man, good. Very good.
Good to see you. Let's jump right in after we tell everybody to follow us on X at We All Follow Pod. For your moment of the week, Nigel, what you got for me?
Oh, I mean, there were some good moments in the weekend, weren't there? In the FA Cup. Uh, but we've got to go Champions League, haven't we? And I could quite easily sit here all day and talk about Arsenal wiping the floor with PSV to a point where PSV might as well write to UEFA and say, should we just do some carbon emission cutting and not even bother travelling to London? Should we just not bother because it's just a dead rubber? But no, my moment of the week is a sliding doors moment where I think if Ibrahima Konate is wearing any other shirt than a Liverpool shirt, maybe a Real Madrid shirt, he might get away if he's wearing a Madrid shirt, but I genuinely think if he's wearing any other shirt than a Liverpool shirt, that's a red card, he's off, and Liverpool play for an hour with 10 men against PSG. I just think that one decision could change that entire game. They went on and won 1-0, didn't they? It was smash and grab. They had two shots all game, and one of them was in the 90th minute and goes in. But yeah, I just think that was a huge mistake by VAR. He's got to go. He's got to go.
That was a diabolical. It was regardless of affiliations, like that's probably one of the worst missed calls that I've seen in quite some time.
It was shocking. It was shockingly bad. And we never usually have to talk about referees in Europe because they're usually that good. But that was, I thought the referee on the pitch should have called it, to be fair. The referee on the pitch should have said, you're off. That's a foul. You can see it a mile away. So yeah, that's my moment of the week. It's a shockingly bad refereeing moment.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately it calls into question, right? The same thing that we've talked about a bunch of times on here about VAR, which is the standard for overturning a call, right? Like when it's quote clear and obvious, right? That is such a high burden of proof. Like you're married to what we would call a lawyer here in the states, and you have some understanding about like the threshold that people that these arguments need to meet, right? And the threshold for that argument is so high that it makes it really difficult for the VAR to send
Yeah,
the referees back to the monitor, right?
I think it clear and obvious should be replaced with correct.
Right. And you
That's
know,
it.
like again, it doesn't like some of them the referee's gonna look at it once and they're gonna be like, no, I was right.
Yeah,
And that's probably gonna happen 90% of the time, right? But
yeah.
like if we're gonna stop the game anyway, like if you're gonna stop the game for let's call it 90 seconds to 2 minutes, right? Every time VAR is checking, then you might as well have the referee go over and take a look see.
You see, that's Matt. You nailed it here. And this is what I was arguing with someone the other day. And I said, if you're going to delay a game so that VAR can check something, what is the point having the referee stood in the middle of a pitch for 4 minutes? Why don't you say, instead
For
of,
then for then to have him go look at it after.
yeah, no. So this is what I don't get. If it's a decision, what you think, oh, that might be a penalty, just stop it and say, just go over to the monitor and just review your decision. We think you might have made an incorrect decision. Yeah, not a clear and obvious error, an incorrect decision to play on. He goes over to the monitor and straight away says, "Nah, I'm not having that." And they say, "Let me just show you the slow mo though." And he went, "Oh yeah, okay." That's all it needs. It could be done in a minute. It could be done. But instead, it is wild.
Yeah, it's one of the. I think it continues to be one of the more frustrating things in football. I mean, it also like where's another thing that I, you know, consider is like where's the referee in the frame of the action, right? And it's something that I haven't really thought of that much until I think it might have been Tim Stillman mentioned it on Arsenal Vision a couple weeks ago, and it was around um, referee positioning, but specifically in Europe versus in the Premier League, where when a foul is made, typically, and this is not a rule, but typically the English referees are running into the situation, whether that's um, to book somebody or even just to mark the spot, versus the way that the continental referees it, approach the like if they're presenting a card, it's often telling the player to come to them, right? And
Yeah.
they're not adding to whatever confrontation may or may not be happening at the ball, right? um I think you could see like that specifically in the Arsenal PSV game, right, where you had a situation where I think Miles Kelly could have easily have been sent off. I think other referees would have certainly sent him off. I think that both of those fouls were technically yellow cards on their own, but together they didn't equal a red, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And again, like circling back to the rules and like all of the corny and pedantic discussions that we have on the podcast, which is like discretion, right? Like referees are allowed discretion to interpret the rules as they see fit, right? And that specific situation, the referee wasn't running into the situation. He stood back. He made his way over to where the foul was called. He told everybody else to stay back. And the captain came over to him from the team who the foul was given to. He stated very clearly that the play was going out of bounds and not towards the goal, and that's why it was a foul and not a yellow,
Mm.
and it got moved on, right?
Yeah.
um so yeah, it sucks because these are the types of decisions that are multi-million dollar decisions, and even just one match in the Champions League is 2.5 million euros for a
Yeah.
win and 700,000 for a draw, right? So you're looking at a swing of a 2 million euros for this result, and that's not even talking about getting into the next round and how much that does for sponsorships that are
Yeah.
contingent on all of these escalators and all of this stuff that we know. So it's definitely unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that that has overshadowed what was otherwise a really fun Champions League first legs. I think my moment of the week was probably that Rodrygo run for the goal that he scored. I mean, first of all, the pass was just exquisite,
Mm.
right? Like the way that the pass cuts is fast enough to make it past the defender, but where the player is running around the defender to get to the ball, it's like in moments like that, you can just see the quality of the players. Both the player making the pass, the player receiving the ball, one, two, three touches to get in the perfect position and banging it in. And I think it's easy when you have Vinicius Jr., when you have Mbappe, when you have Jude Bellingham who missed the game, all these amazing players on the team. It's easy to overlook a player like Rodrygo, who is top tier player, and ultimately helped Real lead going to the second leg at the Metropolitano. So that brings us to Matt Stats Corner. It's now twice weekly segment.
Ah.
So this is retrospective. So the goal of this is to look at the past week and see some stats. So this one was actually based on, so Ben and I, if you watched last week's pod, Ben and I talked about how Burnley was going to play Preston and how it was probably going to be Preston 0, Burnley something, and or one on penalties. And boy, were we wrong. So Now, after the midweek game, Burnley has allowed 4 goals in their last 2 matches. That is 25% of the goals that they've conceded this year came in the last 2 games. The last time they conceded 3 goals was in May of 2024 in the Premier League when they lost 4-1 to Newcastle. So, they are now in a battle to get one of the automatic promotion spots, and it'll be interesting to see if they can eke that back out into the top 2, or if they're going to have to go through the gauntlet that is the championship playoff. So that's the stats corner for today.
You see, I know where you guys were going in terms of that result and why you would have thought Preston wouldn't score. On my Super Six, however, I had Preston. I had Preston 2, Burnley 1.
You're insufferable.
Sorry, but the reason why was because I thought I can remember that it was only a few weeks ago. It was 0-0 in the championship. Preston could have won that game. So it was one of them where I thought, do you know what? This could be a Preston win. So there we go. Can't keep forever.
You weren't on the podcast to tell us that we
I know.
were idiots. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. That's what we get for it. So let's take a brief look at the overall Champions League results. As we talked about briefly, I mean, we can touch on the FA results if any of them stood out to you besides that one. But we do have a fair amount to get through in terms of previewing these second legs as well as the Premier League matches from this weekend. So obviously we had the big Arsenal away win 7-1 against PSV, Dortmund and Lille drawing, Aston Villa putting 3 past Bruges. Like we discussed, the Madrid derby first leg with Real Madrid putting 2 past Atletico. Julian Alvarez with quite the goal for Atletico. You know, I think for him, really all games showing that he was worth every penny that they spent on him, particularly in that system. Enter Thuram with a beautiful goal, kind of like right in front of the goal mouth. And I'm not sure if you saw that one, but it was a really nice piece of technique to get that one.
Yeah, good.
Rafinha also scoring. That guy like only scores screamers.
It did take a bit of a deflection, though, to be fair, past Trubin.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Rafinha is like every goal that I see of him, it's like some type of defensive interception. Like he had the one where it hit off his head and went in. That was like kind of funny. But this one where he picks up the ball in the middle of the field off of a pass from the defense and takes a kind of what looks to be like a really long touch, but nobody else can catch him. And was able to put that one away. Bayern really putting the screws up to Leverkusen. Musiala with kind of like the ball was bumbling around and he managed to kind of toe poke it in, barely getting it over the line. But Kane putting in 2 as well. And then like we discussed the 1-0 Liverpool PSG match where PSG really on the merit and on the day, you would have had to say that they certainly deserved something out of that match. So now that we're looking at going into the second legs, obviously home and away switching, right? Obviously we can totally not talk about the PSV Arsenal game. I think for the most part, the Leverkusen match, that one is it's going to be hard for Leverkusen to come back from, especially after that red card. But you know, we have the Madrid derby return leg. We have the PSG Liverpool. I think those would probably. I think most people would say that those are going to be the 2 kind of premier matches of this return fixtures. How do you see those 2 playing out?
I think PSG have still got a good chance of beating Liverpool because any other day, that's 4, 5, 6 they're scoring. They were electric, and I don't think it'll change. I don't think their approach will change on Tuesday next week. I don't think their approach will change. I genuinely think that they will go and try and do exactly what we've just done in the Port de France. And for Liverpool, yes, you're at home. Yes, it's European night, the old fabled, great atmosphere. I think that genuinely, if PSG get a foothold in that game in the first 15 minutes, that crowd will be silent. It will be silent. And they can definitely start going up and up and up and up. You saw Madrid knock them out a few years ago, didn't you? Where Madrid scored 4 or whatever it were. Liverpool aren't unbeatable at home. Let's get that way. And they're looking more and more susceptible. Especially when teams go at them. When teams go at them, they seem to get seem to look a bit shaky. So yeah, I think PSG have definitely got a shout. I said when the draw came out, I thought Atletico beat Real Madrid over 2 legs. I still think they'll beat Real Madrid over 2 legs. I think it'll be Arsenal versus Atletico in 1 quarter final, and it's a toss-up: PSG, Liverpool versus Villa. I can't see Club Brugge coming back against Villa. I think that's probably going to be done. Although I do see goals in that game. I think Brugge will come and score. I just think they'll concede because they'll go gung ho. And I know you said Bayern versus Bayer. Bayern versus Bayer is probably dead. I don't think it is, because yes, Bayern can go and sit in a block and just defend. They've got to go to Leverkusen, all right? So they're going to Leverkusen, and Leverkusen know they've got to win. Now, there's one thing what Leverkusen do is score goals. They usually score goals. I think that, genuinely, if Bayern go and sit and think they're not going to score more than 3, they're not going to score 3. If they go and sit and concede early, all of a sudden, game plan's out the window. Leverkusen tails up, and then it can start. So I think, depending on, so if Leverkusen score a goal within the first just one goal, within the first 30 minutes, I think that could be lemon booty time if you're a Bayern fan. Just like I think if Liverpool don't score before half time, I think PSG will think they can win that game. I think, win the tie with qualifier. If Liverpool don't score in the first half, I think PSG will believe that they can win it all, that they can knock them out. Because even when it's 0-0, we only need 1 goal and you got extra time. That's the thing. If Liverpool score early and you need 2 goals just to get extra time, then you start panicking. You start panicking a little bit. And same for Real Atletico. I think if Atletico are still only chasing 1 goal at half time, Atletico will still believe that they're going to beat Real. If Real really want to force Atletico's hand, Atletico aren't the team who's just going to come and attack, who normally attack, but they will attack. But they know that they only need 1 goal, and Simeone will haramball it. And if Madrid don't make it force Atletico's hand by making them have to score 2, I think Atletico will feel that they're comfortable in it. They won't. To be fair, the one game. Sorry, Matt. The one game what is genuinely in the balance, is Dortmund-Lille at 1-1, and Dortmund have been shocking in form in the Bundesliga. I think they're about 9th, 8th, 9th, something like that in the Bundesliga, right? Lille have been decent, although they got spanked by PSG 4-1, I think it were, at the weekend. That's a genuine toss-up game. I think Lille have got too much for Dortmund. I think Dortmund will be out.
I mean, it was a spectacular strike by Adeyemi that kept them in this one. It's they didn't create a ton. They had no big chances, only 7 shots and 0.27 xG, which it's not great if you're trying to move through in European competition. But yeah, I think there's going to be some good matchups. The Madrid derby strikes me as one of those like super terrorist 1-0 Atletico, and then like somebody gets 120th minute winner, you know,
Yeah.
like put the cards in a deck and pick one out, and then like you flip it over and it's like Osier Ball, or it's like Jude Bellingham, like somebody's rocking up with a 119th minute winner, you
You
know.
know for a fact it's going to be either Jude Bellingham or it'll be someone like Koke or something like that who'll just pop up 120th minute bank.
100%. That is exactly what's going to happen. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun one. It'll be one for the ages. You know, a lot of Arsenal fans already booking their tickets um, to Madrid as Arsenal's quarterfinal match will be held in Madrid no matter what. Um, yeah, it's the PSG Liverpool one. You know, it's like that meme. Like, how do they keep getting away with this? And it was interesting. It really made me think about Leverkusen's run last year, where they were like 90th minute winner, 95th minute winner, 97th minute winner, right? And they had like at some point they had used up all their luck, right? And the luck ran out, unfortunately, in the final, right, against Ademola Lookman and Atalanta. But it strikes me as one of those situations where like at some point, like maybe it won't be until the later rounds, right? But but at some point you don't get that call and it all comes crumbling down. We'll see if that's going to be this weekend in Liverpool, or if that's going to remain for the future. Let's take a look at the Premier League table. Remains the same as the last time, so we can go, kind of breeze through that. You know, I think right now it still continues to be Liverpool at the top, uh, Arsenal in a really distant second, and then you have that big clump from third, kind of down to 10th, where
Mm.
there's only 6 points separating those teams in the fight for Europe ultimately. As we've said before, based on the results, England, the Premier League is almost guaranteed to have 5 Champions League slots next year, and then as we'll see who advances in the FA Cup, potentially another European slot as well. So let's move into this week's matches, Nigel. We have a pretty big match, top of the table match, one you might say, to open up the weekend with Forest hosting Manchester City at the City Ground. What do you got for me on that one?
So obviously went to Arsenal versus Forest at Forest. I've been having plenty of chats with Forest people, mates who support Forest, local to me, etc. And the one thing what I said to him, I've said to him constantly, is I couldn't believe that you were up against an Arsenal team what had just lost at the weekend, absolutely backs to the walls, no striker, and they played for a draw from first minute. I just did not get it. I did not get why Forest played for a draw from the first minute. Absolutely not. It just bonkers to me.
I mean,
And
to be honest, Nigel, to be honest, like, with all due respect, right? Like you, and I'm not trying to equate the quality of PSV with Nottingham Forest, right? Like, they're in totally different structures in terms of their salary and all of that stuff. Like, one thing that was said in the lead up to the PSV Arsenal game was that um, their whole squad cost half of Declan Rice. You know what I mean? But the point being is that when you play Arsenal, you put yourself out to be embarrassed, right? And like you saw that against Manchester City a couple weeks ago.
yeah,
Like when you come to play the Arsenal, it's a rolling of the dice. And I
yeah.
mean, if I do you want to roll the dice?
Well, I thought that Forest should have rolled the dice. You're in third place in the Premier League, and you've got a chance of closing the gap to 3 points on second. You know that second are vulnerable. They've got no striker, and we didn't roll the dice. They sat in a box. They sat in a box and defended for their lives, which I thought was. I thought it showed a serious lack of intent, especially knowing that there's still 10 games to go in the season. And they could catch Arsenal, they could overtake them, they could cement a Champions League place. And I really get that. I actually think they'll do the opposite against City. I think they know that City are one of them teams who, if you attack, they are vulnerable. And the only thing what I saw from a Forest perspective against Arsenal was they knew that no matter how hard they attacks, we've got the best defence in the league. No matter how hard they come, there's not a chance that there's a chance that they might open themselves up for us to it on the counter, like what you said, like PSV. They opened themselves up. They came onto us, give us space, and then once Odegaard's got space, it's a different story, isn't it? But yeah, I think they'll attack City, and I think this could be one of them games where, if you think about it, last year, Forest could have beat City. Chris Wood missed 2 chances inside the 6-yard box. Craziness.
City supporter and official op of the show, Chris Wood, missed 2 like chances that, Nigel, you give me that amount of space and time, I'm burying them, bro. I'm burying them. For the record, one of the things of note coming into the Arsenal game for Forest was that they had conceded 6 in their last 2 matches. They conceded 2 to Fulham, and then they conceded 4 against Newcastle. And if I remember correctly, wasn't that Newcastle was up like 4-0 like pretty early on, or maybe it was 4-1.
Well, it was 1-0 down. They were 1-0 down, Newcastle, and then scored 4
and they scored 4 in a row
in 15 minutes.
And I think if you're Nuno, like, the last thing you need is to get embarrassed at home by a strikerless Arsenal, right?
Yeah, but we haven't got Alexander Isak, so you don't need to worry about
that. That's totally fair.
We've got Diego Marinino.
But yeah, so you think that City are gonna be that Forest will play offensively and try to go for the win at home against Man City, with a vulnerable Man City who, at this point they're the other part of it is like that's direct rivals for top 5, right? Whereas you might not, you might even, if you're Nuno, you might not think you can catch Arsenal, but you might think that's a good point. Whereas Man City, you're like, this is a 6-pointer that we need to take these points off of them, and we need these points, right?
Yeah, 100%. So City needs to come to attack. I think they'll leave Forest space. I think Forest will exploit it. I think Forest will win. I think there'll be goals, like 3-2 Forest.
That would be a big one, a massive one for Forest in their push for Champions League, which, I mean, when was the last time they were in the Champions League? I would imagine that it's been quite
well, the last time they was in Europe, was 95, I think. Frank Clark was in charge.
Oh, that would be amazing for the team that has 2 stars on the top of their badge. Definitely would for some of the old heads would bring back a lot of memories, and ultimately usher in that type of heritage for a new generation of supporters who have been in the doldrums for quite some time.
I think that was in UEFA Cup. I think UEFA Cup '95. I think it was Frank Clark. I think the season before they had Stan Collymore and Brian Roy was it up front. They absolutely smashed it. Finished about 3rd, I think, or 4th.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a historic club, football heritage for sure, and it's cool to see them back up in at the top table, so to speak. Moving on, Brighton hosting Fulham on the South Coast. Brighton coming into this one kind of 3 wins in a row, but and then they also had the big results in the FA Cup as well, right? With Danny Welbeck scoring the winner to remove Newcastle from the competition. 114th minutes winner for Danny Welbeck. Brighton has been in a good run of form. There's 5 wins in a row in all competitions. Prior to that was that terrible 7-0 drubbing at the hands of Forest. Um, do you think that Fulham's going to have what it takes to get it done on the road on the South Coast?
You look at Fulham's away record, very good. They are very good. I think that's going to be a close game, maybe 1-1. I think Fulham's good enough to at least get a point. I also think Brighton are good enough to make Fulham suffer. So, but I think it'll be 1-1. I think they'll cancel each other out. But Fulham and Palace are two teams what are really impressive at the moment.
Fulham 10 10 matches, no losses head to head against Brighton. Brighton no clean sheets in the last 5 against Fulham. So, um, leads you to believe that there's definitely going to be goals in this one. And yeah, should be an interesting and that'll be kind of one of the end to end ones like that for me. That's probably my neutrals. Potentially, the Wolves Everton one will probably be really entertaining as well. But the Brighton Fulham one, that those when those teams crash, it's going to be an end to end type of midfield battle. It should be pretty interesting. Moving on, obviously Palace hosting Ipswich. Mateta, which we haven't touched on, getting absolutely karate Bruce Lee Jackie Chan kicked in the face. That was so scary to watch. Ultimately,
I said it's probably the worst tackle stroke collision that there has been in football since Schumacher, Harold Schumacher, on Patrick Battison in World Cup 1982 semi-final, Germany versus France. In which
that's a deep pull, Nigel.
But genuinely, if you're listening to this and you've never seen it, go on YouTube, search Schumacher Battison.
I'll throw it in the show notes.
World Cup 82, and Schumacher takes out Battison when he's clean from goal in extra time and knocked him out completely unconscious, nearly. But I think he broke his jaw and stuff like that. It was shocking. This weren't far off it. And the fact that Mateta escaped with 25 stitches in a laceration above his ear, yeah, and didn't get any.
That reaction was me watching it on the side screen. Me flinching. That was me watching.
You see Schumacher? Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Diabolical.
Do you see what I mean, though?
Yeah, that was crazy.
He didn't even get sent off. Schumacher didn't even get sent off there.
Oh my god! If he dies, he dies. That was the energy.
Yeah. But yeah, so Mateta's 25 stitches above his ear. I mean, that goalkeeper. He said the FA have appealed to extend his ban from 3 matches because that's obviously written in the rules, isn't it? It's 3 matches. I genuinely think he shouldn't play again for the rest of the season. I think he should be out, gone. It was horrendous.
That was one of the worst ones I've probably. It's hard because you see some of the leg breakers or potential leg breakers, and you're like, oh. But even the worst like type of leg breaker, it's very very rarely purposeful. You know what I mean? Like it's clumsy 99% of the time. Yeah. And that was really unsafe.
I mean,
and then the goal of the fans to one chant the chants that they were making, and then to pull the victim card. I mean, nobody likes you. There's a reason why nobody likes you. Why nobody likes you.
I don't know if it's the best karate kick that has been at Sellers Park, but it's definitely in the top 2. it's a debate between Eric Cantona and that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was shocking. But but for Palace, the good thing for them is it looked like Eddie Nketiah has found some form off the bench. He's found some form, and he looked good when he came on. He looked good. And the best thing about Palace is that Glasner came in last year. Immediately, the players kind of suited his system, and then he's brought some new players in this year, and it's took them time to get used to his system. And I think that there was quite a few players that were out of form last year. Adam Wharton was rolling. This year, he came back from the Euros cropped. He's been out for around about 4 months. He's back now. I think he was a massive loss. Eze had lost form, came back. He's come back in now. He's on it. The back three now are really settled, whereas they lost Anderson to Fulham, and Lacroix's come in and it kind of changed the dynamic. But obviously Trevor Chalobah was flying, but he's gone back to Chelsea. But now with Richards, Lacroix, and Guehi, they've got a really solid base. Wharton's back in front of them, which is really solidifying. Playing well with Will Hughes.
Munoz has been a delight.
Munoz has been unreal, and that's thing. The two wide players have done really. The two wide fullbacks have done really well. Now I brought in Ben Chilwell, and Chilwell has kind of picked up and improved on what Tyrick Mitchell was offering. And Tyrick Mitchell's good, but Chilwell's kind of gone up. Munoz and Chilwell working well. Ismail Assar and Eze behind the striker, and yeah, if it's Eddie, it's Eddie. I think Palace are way too good for Ipswich. I thought Ipswich had probably got the best chance of staying up out of the 3 teams who got promoted as of about 5 weeks ago. I doubt it now. I just think Ipswich have done a bit of a Luton. They kind of had a bit of hope, and now we're just going to fall like a stone. I think they're going to get smashed.
They also have a lot of players injured at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players who are going to be missing this next match. And with the margins that are in this league, like it's hard for Arsenal to compete with that amount of players injured, let alone a team like Ipswich who's going to be fighting at the margins. So Liverpool hosting Southampton, that reads perfunctory, but never know what can happen. But I mean, Southampton have been so terrible that that one's gonna be 4-5-1 Liverpool, in my opinion. Moving on, Brentford will be hosting Villa. Villa are continuing to do Villa things, which is be inconsistent, right? They let's take a look at Villa. They obviously had the big result this week in the Champions League, which is kind of the calling card of an Unai Emery team. But in the league, their last time out they lost 4-1 to Crystal Palace. Before that, they beat Chelsea, draw at home to Liverpool, and drew at home to Ipswich. So heading away to Brentford, a side that typically plays really well at home. Do you think that Villa are going to have that Champions League hangover? Do you think Unai's going to rotate? And what was remember the statistic that we looked at? It was a couple weeks ago. The last time we were talking about Unai's villains, and I think they have like 1 win after Champions League away match.
Yeah,
Champions League matches at all.
Champions League match anyway. This is another one. I think Villa are in dire trouble. By the way, I think all their eggs are in the Champions League basket now, and I can't see Villa turning up to Brentford with a weakened team. There's a reason why now. So Villa, what's Villa's chance of winning Champions League? Extremely slim. Extremely slim. Yeah, let's put it that way. Villa are in 10th, and they're what? 4 points off top 4? 5 points off top 4? 4 points. 4 points off top 4. Yeah. Top 5 probably gets into a Champions League this year anyway, because of the coefficients. Yeah. But Aston Villa spend 91% of their revenue on wages. The UEFA squad cost ratio is 70%. Villa have failed the squad cost ratio calculations. They're also going to fail PSR, and they're probably going to fail the UEFA financial fair play rules. So they're going to get either kicked out of Europe anyway, or they're going to get a massive fine. Either way, they're going to have to sell a load of players. Now, qualifying for the Champions League next year will soften that blow because you've got a lot of income coming in. If they missed out on Europe altogether, then that's the end of this Villa project as they know it, because they've got to sell a lot. And I'm talking all the big ones will be going. Yeah. So Rodgers, Ramsey, Tielemans, I think they'll all go because they'll have to sell them.
Watkins potentially
They'll
as
have to
well.
sell. They'll have to sell them.
Yeah.
So
That was something
I,
that I was discussing. I don't think we touched on it here, but privately in terms of the lead up to the end of the window, and thinking that they might be in the position to sell both Duran and Watkins just because of the PSR situation
yeah,
that they're in.
yeah, and that's the whole thing. They've gambled really, which is why they've gambled on Rashford and Asensio being able to fire them to either a Champions League place in the league or to maybe pull off the miracle and win the Champions League anyway. Right? I don't see it happening. But we didn't have to make much financial outlay into no transfer fee. It's just the wages are over considerable wages in terms of Rashford. Now, this is why I think they've got to go all out and attack at Brentford. So this game for me is the high-scoring game of the week. Brentford never get a 0-0. Never get a 0-0. I think that this could easily be a 4-3, 5-3, whatever. Because I think both teams have got to go for it. I think Brentford know that if they get a win, they could start getting into that mix for maybe a European place because it's so tight. Just above Brentford, I think Brentford are 11th, aren't they? Brentford 11th, 12th?
Yeah, Brentford are 11th on 38 points and Villa are 10th on 42.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
So,
ultimately, that's another. I'll pull the table back up. That's
yeah.
another six pointer in this way.
Yeah. So if Brentford win, they know that top five are going to get Champions League, which means that 6 gets Europa League,
Mm-hmm.
7th will get Conference League.
Right.
We could potentially have down to 8th place if someone who's already in Europe, in European places, wins the FA Cup.
Right.
So, say for example, if who's left actually, City. Say if City win the FA Cup, then 8th could get into Europe. So if you're Brentford, you're thinking, oh, we could be potentially
But
3
let's
points
look at
off
the team.
Brighton.
Looking at the teams that are in the FA Cup: Fulham, Palace, Brighton, Forest, Villa, Bournemouth, and City.
Yeah,
Right. So I think of the only three out of those teams are not currently in this hunt.
yeah,
Right. So odds are that the winner of the FA Cup will be in one of these positions, and that
yeah,
you'll get an extra European place on top.
yeah. So that's why I think Brentford are going to attack. I think that this is a genuine mid-table battle, and it's a genuine. If you look at the goals for and goals against to both teams, +5, -5, I think that it's just going to be end to end, end to end.
Yeah, Aston Villa have continued to get some results that again belie their goal difference. Emi Martinez, who's ultimately one of the top goalkeepers in the world, continues to bail them out week in and week out. Um, they I mean, like even if you think about the Liverpool game, like the diabolical chances that Liverpool missed in that one, that
Mm.
I mean, Darwin. When I had Darwin Nunez as my moment of the player of the week for the performance that he put in against Aston Villa, certainly you would think that they're going to continue to slip, but yeah, Brentford away is tough no matter what, right? They're coming, they're traveling. They traveled to Bruges this past week. Now they're coming down to Brentford, and um, I think all of their eyes are going to be on that Champions League game. But it's I would say this one at this point in the season, 10 matches left to go, like you're getting into we have to win 7 of those matches if we want to get into
Yeah,
Europe, right? And you
yeah,
can't afford to just concede and rotate one of these, particularly with the financial situation. And it's something that Unai's even alluded to in the window, like balancing the sporting with the financial and the club's reality, right? I think in
yeah,
Unai's perfect world, he would play a mostly rotated side in this match, and they would rock up to their next Champions League one with
mm,
their starting 11. But that's not the reality for them right now. Um, Even though that is typically how Unai would approach something like this.
yeah.
That brings us into Wolves Everton. Wolves, I mean, Everton have been in a rich vein of form. 2 wins, 3 draws in their last 5, bringing themselves up into 16th place on 32 points. Facing Wolves in 17th, who are going to continue to try to create that buffer uh, against the teams that the promoted teams that we kind of expect to go down at this point. Um, Cunha has been in a good vein of form recently since signing his contract in the last transfer window, or upon the end of the last transfer window. Is this going to be one where you expect Everton to go away and get a result?
Uh, since Jose Mourinho took over at Everton, Everton have been scoring goals. Uh, Wolves concede goals. Uh, Wolves also score goals, but with no Cunha, I think that this could be a problem. Uh, I I don't see it being particularly exciting. I think it it's Saturday night football. It should be good, but yeah, I don't see it being particularly exciting. But you never know. I think Wolves need a win just to really solidify. Yeah, that the bottom three of the bottom three are now going down, and Everton with a win could go above West Ham and Man United. I do believe with a win,
And
which
Spurs they're currently on 32. They would be on 35, and throw themselves into 13th place
yeah,
above Spurs
yeah,
and Man United.
yeah. And to be fair, the three teams who did overtake could all lose at the weekend. Spurs at home to Bournemouth, Man U at home to Arsenal, West Ham at home to Newcastle. They could potentially all lose, which means that Everton then stay in 13th.
Yeah.
So yeah, be interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting one. Yeah, Cunha suspended for that one. I think that takes a lot of the excitement factor out of it. And like you said, Everton have begun to score, which, as we know, is the key to getting out of these kinds of quagmires. So I would expect Everton, like the Wolves' game plan is predicated around the dynamism of Cunha, right? And
Mm,
so without that player, they're going to be stuck in a way. And Everton recently have shown the ability to go and get the goals. So that one screams like 2-0 Everton, 2-1 Everton to me. Moving into Chelsea Leicester, I think that'll be a pretty perfunctory performance. Leicester, who have conceded 61 goals this season, a Chelsea team that likes to play through the thirds, likes to have that kind of attacking intent. Um, that brings us to our dear friends, dear North London amigos, Tottenham Hotspur, who will be hosting Bournemouth at the Toilet Bowl. Bournemouth they've been on a bit of a skid, right? They've lost their last 2 in a row. in the league, right? Obviously, they made it through on penalties in the FA Cup, but is this the perfect time for Bournemouth to be playing Spurs?
Yeah,
Or is it the perfect time for Bournemouth to be playing Spurs?
I think Bournemouth need this. They do need this. I think it's a good time for him to play Spurs. I mean, Solanke's come on last night to try to rescue. Did he come on or did he start? Anyway, I've seen it. Seen him limping off. I mean, Spurs are in trouble, aren't they? You've lost 1-0 away in Europe on a Thursday night. You've potentially lost your player again who you've just brought back. Apparently, the players were arguing with the fans at the end or telling the fans to stop booing. That's not good. And then you got to play at home. Are we going to rest players? Because I think they need to. I think Spurs' only chance to getting into Europe next season is to win the Europa League and then get in the Champions League. You'll be in the Champions League if you do that. That
I mean,
is
to be
Spurs'
honest,
only shout.
I 1,000% is their only shot. Mate, they conceded 1.61 xg to 0.4. Like the chances that AZ Alkmaar missed
Mm,
were some of the craziest misses that I've seen in quite some time.
yeah,
Like
but yeah,
that was they were lucky. They were lucky to leave there 1-0. You
yeah.
know?
The problem what they've got though is if Ange has already said I win trophies in my second season, so it's Europa League or bust. It is
Yeah,
Europa League
yeah,
or
yeah.
bust.
100%.
So
100%.
so are we going to rest players at the weekend? I think they've got to. But think about what the situation we're in. It's the same for Man United, by the way. Man United are in the same situation here. Are Man United and Tottenham both willing to possibly lose a home league game and build pressure on the manager and on the team with another loss in the league, which means that they're in 14th, 15th place in the league? Or do they go all out on a Sunday, risking burnout, maybe injuries, to then have to play a Europa League game the following Thursday and possibly lose or get knocked out at home?
I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean,
Yeah.
particularly for Man United hosting Arsenal, a traditional rival. Man United historically since 2006 have played 19 matches against Arsenal at Old Trafford. Arsenal have lost 11 of those matches. There have been 4 draws, and Arsenal have won 3 of them. So in the last 5 matches, Arsenal have won 2. So 2 of the 3 wins that Arsenal have at Old Trafford in the last 20 years, Nigel, have come in the last 5 years,
Mm.
right? So it's really difficult for me to see like it's more plausible for Ange to do rotation, right? Against Bournemouth, a team that they don't care. That's not a rivalry. It's not, I don't think the, that they'll put out the kids, right? But I could see them rotating some players in. But I'm not sure if Amram has that same ability to do that against Arsenal. That wouldn't end well for him
No.
at Old Trafford, especially as you've reported in the last couple of weeks with the higher ups at Man United questioning not only his team selection but his in-game tactics.
So in-game management is the thing, and the one what big did raise a big scratch in head was the game at Tottenham, the 1-0 loss at Tottenham, uh, which didn't didn't look good. The fact that he just left the kids on the bench till the 91st minute, no changes, really head scratching. So yeah, I think that there's some genuine them two are just in deep trouble, and The only way, genuinely, the only way that I see this ending well for either of them is if they won the Europa League. But can Tottenham win the Europa League? I don't think they can. I don't think they're good enough. Do Man U want to win the Europa League? I don't think Amorim wants to, because I think that if he did that, it distracts from what the reality, and the reality is that they're not good enough. They're not good enough to compete.
But if we look at the way the teams are assembled, right? Like I think Man United have a better chance, a significantly better chance to be able to compete and go deep in a competition like the Europa League. You know, as we've discussed on here, their issue is mostly a goal scoring issue, right? Their defense is not terrible. When you look at the league table and even their performances in Europe. So for me, I think that Man United are probably better suited to win the Europa League. I at the end of the day, like Amarin is fighting for his job. I mean, obviously they both are, but I think Man United have the defensive ability in a knockout tournament to keep some goals out and to maybe nick one here or there. Like you ask an Ahmad or a Garnacho to they have Xerxes and you know they have these guys who will show up randomly and throw one in. Obviously Bruno can smack one in from 20-30 yards out, which is how you win these kinds of knockout tournaments. Spurs are so leaky at the back. It's really hard to win knockout tournaments with a terrible defense. And by terrible defense,
Yeah,
I mean absolutely no defensive plan. It makes it really challenging to win these types of tournaments.
yeah. Well, that's it, and that's the reason why we are where we are in the league. Look at the goals that they concede. For Man United, they've got a problem at both ends. Not only do they concede silly goals, they don't score. Man U don't score. Very, very, very rare that Manchester United score more than one goal in a game. Very rare.
It's interesting to me that the emergence of Ethan Winery for Arsenal actually because he he's a fearless player.
Mm,
And you know he in a lot of ways he plays like somebody who's way older. In a lot
mhm.
of ways he plays like a 17-year-old in terms of he's not afraid to take responsibility, he's not afraid to have a shot, he's not afraid to have a go. And I think that's the kind of energy that you have to bring to a place like Old Trafford. Like you've seen the Arsenal teams of the last couple of years play the badge, play the history, play the stadium, and even like the one last year that was the 1-0. Um, that was like the Arsenal's worst performance in
We were tepid.
months.
We were tepid, but I think as well as us being tepid, that was Man U's cup final. They really, really wanted to put one on us. And that was probably their best performance at that time under Ten Hag. That was probably the performance against us what set the blueprint for them to go against City in the cup final.
Yes, and but they had already had the performance, a really good performance at Anfield, if you remember, right?
Yeah.
And but the difference was, in my opinion, the Anfield performance was them playing really well, and the performance against Arsenal was at Old Trafford was Arsenal playing really poorly, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the distinction for me. But for me, I think this year, even the funny thing about Arsenal is that with Marino as your striker, like nobody's really expecting much out of you, and I think that this is these are the types of fertile grounds of which you get that kind of result that you've really been wanting against a really bad Manchester United team. I don't think it's going to be 6s and 7s at all, but I think it could totally be one of those 3-0 games where Arsenal has 4 xg and somehow manages to only score 3, like an Ethan Winery shot from the edge of the box open things up, and then you have a Man United that's trying to get one back.
I'll never predict a win at Old Trafford for Arsenal.
Yeah,
Because
and of course, you know I'm gonna get clipped up.
I just know how bad we are when we go there. And the other thing is, I think we've only scored more than one goal twice since I can remember. From what I can remember, I think we've only scored more than one goal twice. Both of them have been losses. Oh no, sorry, 3 times we've scored twice. 3 times scored twice I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's probably my hot take. But you know, the thing that I think unlocked in Arsenal, and there was a lot of things that contributed to the performance that they had this past weekend in the Champions League, but you really saw that positional interchanging, and I think that's something that when you don't play with the same players every week, then it becomes difficult to know where people are going to be, and you get conservative, right? Because you don't want to be the guy who gets caught out in the wrong spot. And with a week of training and the time that they've had in the matches, like they looked really fluid this past weekend, or this past week in the midweek match, and I think that's could be something that challenges the Man United defense.
I was just going to say the one reason why I think they didn't look fluid is because PSV came onto it. Will Man United come on to Arsenal? If Man United come on to Arsenal, I think that is the big thing.
Yeah, Dorgu's going to be out. Dorgu will be out this one. When we look at the after the red card from last week, it's going to be an interesting matchup for me. I think certainly Man United are out for the taking. Dorgu being the only left-footed player that can play that wing back position for Manchester United. They've started to settle into that back group of De Ligt, Maguire, and Euro. De Ligt not particularly good at playing out from the back, and I think for Arsenal, if I was managing, I would sit off in a low block. I would let De Ligt try to have to play the ball out from the back, and I think when you play it like Arsenal actually did at home, right? I don't think it was the last one, but it was the one where Jesus sent Dallo into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
That match, Arsenal played a mid block, right? They let Onana have the ball, and I think you will see concentrated press to where Arsenal let Onana have the ball. They press from Arsenal's right, so that the ball is getting funneled into De Ligt, who is, as you've discussed on this show, is not the best with his ball at his feet, and hopefully they can take advantage, pounce, and get the result. But then that leaves us, our last match is going to be West Ham Newcastle as we wrap up and head towards closing out the podcast. Um, West Ham Newcastle, I think there's definitely going to be goals in that one. Can I get a prediction from you, Nigel?
3-1 West Ham.
3-1 West Ham. And who would be your double chance for this weekend? That's always part of this podcast here. We have a double chance pick.
That's a good shout. I mean, if I were looking down at it, I'd say Forest are probably the best chance of a draw or win. But I think there might be odds on. I don't think the odds would be any good for Forest. But yeah, Forest would be draw or win. And I think Fulham are a good bet for a draw or win at Brighton.
Yeah.
But the one what I'd throw out there is Brentford to beat Villa. I think Brentford are a genuine win this week.
Yeah, again, Villa's record after European matches is not great. Brentford currently at plus 125 if you are looking at the American odds. Double chance at minus 250. Um, so yeah, that could definitely be an interesting one. Both teams to score. Also, if you're putting together one of those fancy accumulators, that would definitely be one that you would expect to hit. So thanks for joining me, Nigel. It's great to see you and have a chat. Some interesting games this weekend. Historic ties that perhaps have fallen in prestige over the last couple of years, but ones that should be fun nonetheless. So talk to you next week, and we'll be there.